We're moving. Hey, everyone. So thanks so much for jumping on the Lunch and Learn today. As always, we're going to be thinking about 5-10 minutes, 15, about the presentation, and then leaving as much time as possible for Q&A, discussion, all that good stuff. So today's chat is about defining and then refining your personal mission. And I want to focus as much on practicality. I think there's a lot out there. We're all plugged in through uni, through organizations such as House Hack, to mission, trying to understand what we want to do in life through our work, through personal projects. And I think it's something that is both really, really complicated and both really, really not at the same time. So what I want this focus to be on is just trying to break down that personal mission, what it means, and think about as we go how it applies to you. And then at the end, we can open it up to chat. So starting off, I've broken everything down into 3 stages, 3 terms that I'm going to also define, because I think sometimes we smash them all together and they mean the same thing when actually they don't. They're quite separate. So we're thinking about values, we're thinking about mission, and we're thinking about vision. So just hold in your head what that means to you at the moment. But for me as well, it's also a chronological process. So we start with our values to then enable us to create our mission, which then enables us to create the vision. And we use all 3 of them separately as part of a triangle, if you like, of what that personal mission is for us. So the first one is values. We're thinking about what is important to us. That's all a value is. It's just a list of words that we resonate with, that we are empathetic towards. And when I say it's important to you. Everyone's values are different. So a value is typically a trait, an activity. It's something that we resonate with. So it might be ambition, it might be honesty, it might be bravery, optimism, love. All of these things, I would say, are values, are things that we can hold within ourselves that we think is important. And typically when we think about values relating to mission, we would want to think about 4, 5, 10, 20, but probably no more than that, because we want to end up refining them, as we'll come to in a bit, to the key ones that we want to focus on or resonate with the most. So the mission, or a mission statement, then we can think about as a collection of our values, but said in a way that makes sense. So as instead of separate words, it is more of that sentence or that end goal. It reminds you why you're doing what you're doing and what that embodiment of those values actually looks like. And then when we think of vision, which I've got the slide in the wrong place, we think about how we're actually getting there, to that mission statement, to that embodiment of those values. So hopefully that, on a definitional level, makes us think of how these things are all different. And what I'm going to talk about now is kind of combining them and trying to take through a bit of a practical process to find your own, as well as showing you an example of mine, or something that can be said to be mine. So I've alluded to it already, but values typically will be words. Mission will typically be a sentence, and the vision, the collection of sentences that make up the vision to get to the mission, the how to. Okay. So the quick example of mine, the values that I hold in my head, the values that I would say that I have: trust, service, opportunity. These are words that I try to live, I try to embody. They're words that resonate with me. And you guys are smart people. You can Google, just go on and Google list of values, and you'll come up with 300 words of ones to choose from. Just go through, scroll down, and pick ones out. Write them down separately if you're stuck for words to think of for yourself. Equally, do what I just did a second ago and just think of words that you think might be of value. And once you've got a short list like this could be 10, 20, we're going to be going down and thinking about creating a sentence. So this is something that I've come to over the last couple of months. It's in my LinkedIn cover photo as well. And creating a more equitable world through service. So that's a mission that I know what it means. It's got values in there, but it might not be the clearest thing to other people. It might not even be clear to me how I'm getting there. And that's the role of a vision. So when I'm thinking of a vision to create that equitable world through service, what does it actually mean? Now, this is an okay vision, but it probably needs to be more fleshed out even than it is here. So building businesses and projects which leave a lasting positive impression. So there's an element of legacy to that. There's an element of businesses and projects being a vehicle to that equitable world that I'm talking about. So what we've started from the values, from those words, is we're building a picture for ourselves. We're building a picture and a narrative from the words that we identify with, through the mission to that end goal, that end world, that embodiment of those values, to then think about a vision to the kind of more detail of how to get there. And so typically, as an exercise, this is what I'd say to you to do or to go away and think about. In terms of the values, we want to create a list for ourselves, but we don't want to limit it. So think about, what I just said, Googling list of values and just going down a massive list, just brain dumping a ton of words on a page, and typically think about 15 minutes or so for that. And then think about creating a sentence, several sentences, however it comes to you in terms of how you create different sentences that make sense to you based on those values. So I can scroll back and say that this is my final sentence, but actually I messed around with a lot of different ones before I came to that based off of these words here. So other sentences I might have toyed with might be embodying honesty in everything I do to create trust. That's something that, again, is a sentence that I would resonate with as a potential mission, but not as much as that. So what I want you to be thinking about is go through, and I've put passive here because I haven't put a time frame, because this is not something you can just sit down and do necessarily. It will be something that will organically change over time. But you want to be creating these different sentences, phraseologies in a different way you can then combine together for your vision later on, once you've got that one sentence that means everything or that means a lot to you. And so the vision then is breaking down, as I said, in a bit more of a detailed way than the one I've put on that slide, of actually how do you get to that mission? How do you bring all these things together? And really, it's about trying to say in detail, what is that mission that I've just defined? I know I resonate with that sentence, but how do I break it down? And that's what the vision is trying to do for you. So you're trying to break it down into several sentences or a short paragraph to say, actually, that's the journey that I'm on. And once you've got that, you should have several words that you really are attracted to, a word that's a mission statement, that's kind of everything that you're working towards fills within that, and a paragraph that then is hinting at the roadmap of things to get there. Now, it's not practical actions per se, that's a next step. That's kind of the routines and things. And Charlie's video, I think, from a couple of weeks ago will hint at that. Really, that vision is still something to pin on the wall. It's still something to have at the center of your world, but it's more detailed than that mission. So I hope that I've made that clear. So that's the end from me. This is something brand new from a business that was involved with, I think, Calsac IC 2.0, who are building a network, a database of speakers to run feedback through events. So not just chats like this, speeches like this, but corporate conferences and everything in between. So if I could get you, please, after the first 10, 15 minutes of that chat, just to ping that link in and take 30 seconds now to just leave a short comment. So hopefully it works. I can always ping you the URL as well if I just pause my screen share there. I can get that in the chat in case the link doesn't work, and then think also about questions so we can have a bit of a chat, because I appreciate that some of this stuff is quite, fluffy. It's up there, it's in the air, which is what we're trying to get down to with this chat. So where am I? I'm just going to come back and put that URL in the chat, and then we can have more of a discussion for the last 10 minutes or so.
Nice. Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I think I've added the review to it as well, which is nice. So it did work on my end on my phone, so that's cool as well. But yeah, that was good. Really interesting. I think there's some stuff probably from even the podcast episode we did last week on values orientation that I think I can bring to this as a question that is pretty relevant as well. So when you have a mission vision statement already written out, to what extent can you accept opportunities that are not necessarily aligned to it, but could in the future help you achieve that vision or mission? So say if you're skill deving and picking up an opportunity that says, oh, you can learn a lot from this, but it won't resonate as strongly with you. Is that something that should be perceived on equal value to something that could be in the short term more aligned to your vision, but not perhaps enough growth in the future?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting one. And I think that's where I'd go back to values at the very beginning and think about what words are kind of prioritized, what values are more important for you. So going back to my values, when I mentioned those different mission statements that I could have created, service was a word that is something that sits with me more than trust or honesty, which aren't appearing in that mission statement of mine. Does that mean that I am the most honest person ever and actually I've never lied in my life and blah, blah, blah? Like, no, of course it doesn't, but it's something that I want to aspire to embody and I value, hence the word value, and I think is important. If something does not align with that, does that mean that you shouldn't do it or should do less of it? Beyond that question of priority, what you need to ask yourself is to what extent the thing that you're doing or the thing that you want to do leads to that mission being real and being something that is less of an end game, the world I want to create, but is actually a piece of that is real now. And if that's true, then do the thing. If it's not true, doesn't mean you don't do it, but just think about how it aligns. So my question would also be about self-awareness, of think about how aware you are of what the mission that you might have is, but also how mission driven you are, because it isn't all about mission. You got to get paid for things. You've got to have time that is nothing to do with your values or your life that you want to live coming real, and sometimes that's absolutely okay. Of course it is. So something that might be as part of your values, to put that in a more practical way, is maybe connection would be a value, right? It might not be a value that you prioritize a huge amount. So it might not appear in your mission statement, but then actually something that doesn't align with that value, but with that mission, but aligns with the value, is spending quality time with your family. That's the connection side, but does it align to the mission? Maybe not. Does that mean you should never speak to your family again? No. So kind of you have to play the priority, you have to play the importance of mission to you and how mission driven you are, because not everyone has it as like the one thing that rules their life, and I don't think we should either. So hopefully that answers your thoughts or question.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. Anyone else got any questions? Lucy?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting actually, and it's not something that we really think about that much. I guess some people possibly think about it a bit more than others, but I think especially when you're young, you feel like you're kind of on the treadmill of having to do so many things to get to a certain place, and it's good to sort of stand back and think about values and mission and sort of what you want to achieve a bit more long term and in a bit more of a deep, meaningful way. I guess my question is, to what extent do you feel like those values have guided you sort of in practice?
Yeah, no, it's a big one actually, and I think it comes on to what I just said about the extent to which we are all mission driven, because I think I've both pushed myself to be more mission driven, and I think innately or whatever, I am quite mission driven. I've always done a lot of work that has aligned with a statement like that mission of creating more equitable world through service without thinking about it, and that's just something that I've always pushed towards. So I've done a lot of community work, I've done a lot of youth work, I've done a lot of shit like that that is aligned to that mission, but is not something that necessarily I might have thought about in the first instance of doing that thing. So in terms of the kind of practical side of it, there is an element that I know on my personal level that I need to be doing things that are mission driven. Does that mean that everything needs to be mission driven? No. But I know that I can feel actually too when my week to week actions or a certain thing that I do or say doesn't fit with that. And so then I know that there's a tension, there's a conflict there that I need to resolve for myself. So I don't know what an example of that might be. I haven't had one for a while, but it might be calling something out that doesn't align with that mission, for example. So because of not calling that out, whatever that thing might be, I might then be in conflict at that point in time. So hopefully that answers your question, Lucy.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Matt, just seen you put in the chat as well how your values changed in recent years. What do you think in the influence in personal values? It's a great question. And again, I think it's something that isn't quite gotten across enough in the sort of standard way of talking about values, mission, and vision, is that it's an organic thing. It changes over time. We change as people, and this is simply a lens through which to see ourselves, or to plan ahead, or to channel our actions. And so personally, yeah, I would say that my values have changed over time, or they've certainly become different in terms of the priorities there. But some values have fallen away over time. You know, if I was to make a list of my top 5, one that a few years ago would have been there but isn't there so much now is learning, because I've spent 18 years in education. I've just graduated last summer. I've almost had enough of learning for a minute, and I feel that I'm embodying the lifelong learner that I need to, but only to the extent that I'm happy with that. And so it's probably not on the list for now, because I feel like I've done that, and now for me it's more about application and action than learning. So that's one that is still a value I would have. It's in my top 10, or was something I resonate with, but isn't something that is at the top at the moment. But it might be next year, it might be next quarter or whatever, which is probably the next point of continuing to evaluate these things over time. So I'd probably pencil in an exercise like this every 12 months, 6 months, 9 months, just whenever I feel like it's something that I'm getting more moments of that conflict or tension, or I'm thinking about it more often of, actually, am I living up to that mission? Does that mission still resonate? I just sit down and do that kind of exercise of 15-minute value word dump, mission, collectively bringing sentences together to create that one sentence to rule them all, and then the vision of thinking about what that paragraph might look like for me. So when you're just thinking about it for the very first time, you don't need to religiously do it every week. This isn't something to do in that way, but it is something that will change over time for sure. But then, no worries. But then it is an interesting one to think about though, because there's probably an element of nature versus nurture here too, in that some of it probably doesn't change that much. We're all young people, but we're also getting to a point of stability and maturity where we're not volatile personalities as much as we were when we were younger. And there probably are things that have stayed the same for a long period of time. So in terms of those values, there probably is some that are never going to go away from that list, because we just have gravitated so far in that direction that a big paradigm would have to shift to change that. But yeah, 5 more minutes. I don't know if there are any other thoughts, questions, ideas.
I'll go to Lily. Got any questions? She's smiling like she has. Okay, great. Augusta, have you got any questions?
I just find it interesting. One thing, you have an interesting shirt, Ryan. I really like it. And
Thanks.
secondly, yeah, I never thought deeper into values as well. It's such a philosophical question, and I feel like with so many people, once you raise this question of philosophy, of values, of life, they they just roll their eyes and like, where do you use that? But yeah, I guess I don't have an exact question, since the most of the time I was just thinking of mainly what are my values, and I guess the most practical way would be just to remember them and see if it's your life, and to how do I say it, and to think, if you're really going to the right way of living, do you agree that this would be one of the main um, reasons to recognize your values? Just, I guess, to know your life path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just put a list in the chat of 300 values or something that I just Googled quickly as well. But I think, Augusta, what you're getting at is using this as a tool to live the life that you want, as you might put it, or kind of
Yes, this is about
that pathway, and kind of thinking about that. I think my sort of standard response within 3 minutes, without rambling on too much, is that this sort of vision mission stuff is not something that you find for yourself. You create it for yourself, and within that, I think it's commonly told that purpose and mission is something that you discover. You randomly find it within yourself, and you just bring it out of you and start living this randomly weird, different life that's 100% of the values that you have, and you're suddenly at the highest level of human potential possible. It's like, fuck off. It just doesn't make sense, right? So yeah, of course, there is an element of this that you're living to the extent of your fullest self, and you are embodying traits or values that you maybe never have because you've not wanted to, or been suppressed in a certain way from behaving in a certain way as a youngster or whatever. Of course, there's a lot of psychology behind these things, but that's not what this chat is about. Really, when you think about that as like long-term life path, mission stuff, think about it in the sense of that tension that I mentioned earlier. What about your life, because it's yours, no other people, is not currently aligned to that? And if there is something you can change about that, maybe this mission and vision exercise can be a way to just have a little sentence in your head, or have a bit of a paragraph or some detail to then apply to the things you'll do. It's another perspective. It's another lens to see the way that things are panning out. It's not, it's not your personal Bible, to quote a very bad phrase, of just, you have to do that and that's it. Like, you can change it, and it is something that will change over time. It's another lens to relate to yourself, and I think use it as the tool that it is the kind of final thought that I'd bring to that. So I hope that in some way answers your question, Augusta.
Yeah, it also reminded me of one quote, as in, if you want to live an extraordinary life, your values should be extraordinary too, as in like not of an average person's ones as well. But
yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what average values might be, because they're all yours, they're all personal. But yeah, it's an interesting way to think about it.
I guess it's just like more of a, when thinking of a career path, when one's values could be like maybe relationships and friendships with, and well, partying is not a value, but you know, but it's easy to value friends, and it's not easy to value your life's mission, as you told. So I guess that's the
Yeah, kind of thinking about how they might be at odds with one another and thinking back to that priority, I guess, too. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. And I think we're going to stop recording now as well. So thanks for jumping on.